My name is Ryan Carter, 31 years old, founder of a multi-million-dollar commercial real estate firm in Austin, Texas. And the moment my wife looked me dead in the eye, hair still wet from a SoulCycle class, suitcase half-zipped behind her, and said, "Either we open our marriage or I'm leaving." I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I walked over to the dining table, took off my wedding ring, and placed it on the black marble like it was a dead weight I'd finally decided to let go of. No screaming match, no pleading, just a door closing behind her. She thought I'd chase her. She expected me to panic. Instead, I changed the locks. And when she came back, 3 months later, wearing the same dress from our wedding anniversary dinner and tears glistening in her lashes like some twisted Hallmark ad, I didn't open the door. If you've ever poured your entire soul into something, into someone, only to realize they saw you as a stepping stone, not a partner, like this video, drop a comment, respect isn't negotiable, and hit that subscribe button if you've learned like I did, that sometimes love isn't the problem, it's who you gave it to. You'd never guess from looking at me now, but I started this life with nothing but a beat-up Honda Civic and a prepaid flip phone. I was the guy eating cup noodles in a Target suit, knocking on office doors in the middle of July heat with sweat stains and hope. Back then, success didn't just feel far away, it felt like it belonged to a different species. College had spit me out with a degree in economics and 0 job offers. No family connections, no Uncle Steve in real estate. Just me, my cracked iPhone 5, and a stack of business cards I printed at a FedEx for $9.99. I rented a glorified closet in an old strip mall off I-35, $300 a month, if I agreed to fix the toilet myself. The desk was Craigslist. The chair had one wheel missing. But the phone worked, and that was enough. Cold calls from 700 a.m. to 900 p.m. every damn day. Rejections so brutal, they started to feel like part of my name. "Hi, this is Ryan. Not interested, click." Sometimes I go days without anyone picking up. Once, I made 200 calls in a single week and booked one appointment which canceled. But I stuck it out. I wasn't chasing a dream. I was chasing dignity. I didn't want to impress anyone, I just wanted to stop apologizing for existing. Year 1, I made $47,000 and lost 15 pounds from stress and top ramen. Year 2, $73,000. Year 3, 6 figures. Then came Jake Sullivan. Jake was my freshman roommate in college, the kind of guy who could sell sunscreen in a snowstorm. He had that charisma, effortless, magnetic, infuriating. Where I was analytical, he was instinctive. Where I read contracts, he read people. We reconnected by accident, ran into each other at a food truck park. I had mustard on my tie. He had a glass of wine and a Rolex tan line. I told him I was building something, he said. "Let's build it together." 6 months later, we opened our brokerage in a 200-square-foot office above a pawn shop. The coffee maker groaned louder than the air conditioner. We had to scoot our chairs just to stand up. But damn, we were hungry. We specialized in commercial real estate warehouses, office buildings, industrial lots, the long game stuff. Big commissions, big headaches, big risk. Our first real break came when Jake hustled a meeting with a downtown developer 12-story office building, fully leased, pulling $2.8 million a year in rent. Took us 4 months of late nights, caffeine, and legal juggling. But when it closed, $340,000 commission, after expenses and taxes, we each walked with $120K. I stared at that wire transfer like it was a hallucination. That was the moment it shifted from struggling to scaling. Within 5 years, we had 23 agents under us and a 4,000-square-foot office with floor-to-ceiling glass and a view of downtown Austin that still makes me stop mid-call. And that's when Jessica Moore walked into my life. She was 24, a social media coordinator at some now-defunct lifestyle startup. We met at a rooftop networking event. She wore black silk, red lipstick, and confidence like armor. She wasn't subtle, but she was sharp. She asked about ROI margins on urban redevelopment. She knew the difference between a 1031 exchange and a short sale. Back then, I thought she was impressed by my mind. Looking back, she was doing ROI calculations on me. We started dating fast. 2 years later, we were married. Not eloped, not courthouse, no. Jessica wanted the kind of wedding that made people feel underdressed just watching the video. She wanted a venue outside of town, a renovated 1920s mansion with marble floors and chandeliers that cost more than my first year of rent. Open bar, live band, 4 to 500 in white peonies. Her dress, $3,200. She wore it for 6 hours. "This is our forever," she said, twirling under the flower arch like we were inside a rom-com. I paid for all of it. Her parents chipped in maybe $500 for party favors. But I didn't care. I was in love, and love, I thought, was supposed to feel like sacrifice. My lawyer David sat me down 2 months before the wedding and said, "Ryan, you're building something real. You need a prenup." I brought it up. Jessica burst into tears, accused me of not trusting her, of turning our love into a contract, of preparing for failure. She looked at me like I had kicked her dog, and like a fool I backed off. The night before our wedding, she toasted me with champagne and whispered, "This is the smartest decision you'll ever make." She wasn't wrong, just not in the way she thought. If you're still here, I want you to remember this. Not all betrayals happen in silence. Some start with applause, with toasts, with $1,000 centerpieces. Some betrayals smile at you while you walk down the aisle. And others, they hand you an ultimatum disguised as enlightenment. Let's open our marriage. Let's break the contract and still call it love. But I'll tell you what I did with that contract. I rewrote it. And in part 2, I'll show you exactly how the cracks began. How the dream wedding became a silent war zone. And how her mask slipped when the money started growing faster than the marriage. It only takes one question to start an avalanche. Why do I feel lonelier now than when I had nothing? Stay tuned. If I had to pinpoint the first crack in our marriage, it wasn't some scandal or dramatic fight. It was subtle, like a draft you only feel when the doors barely open. At first, it was little things. Jessica started calling our success lucky. "You're lucky Austin's market blew up. Lucky Jake found that developer. Lucky you weren't born poor." That one stung the most because She knew that. I grew up in a 1-bathroom duplex in Waco with 2 siblings, sharing a futon and rotating turns on the good blanket. My mom worked double shifts at a nursing home, and my dad never made it past assistant foreman at the mill. We weren't just not rich, we were allergic to stability. And yet here she was, calling my climb luck. But I let it go, because sometimes the person you love says something tone deaf, and you forgive it. You tell yourself it's stress, or a bad day, or maybe a wine-fueled slip. You don't realize they're building a pattern. Jessica stopped working about 6 months into our marriage. She said the digital marketing space had become toxic, that she needed space to find something more aligned. What that meant in practice was yoga at 10 a.m., spin class at noon, brunch with her influencer friend Danny at 2, and a wine subscription that cost more than our internet and utilities combined. But I didn't push. I wanted her to feel supported. I told myself, this is the American dream. I build. She rests. I give. She thrives. That's what love does, right? But over time, the dynamic shifted. Suddenly, I wasn't a builder, I was a provider. Not in the we're a team sense, no. More like I earned. And she edited. My work paid for her aesthetic. She redecorated our perfectly fine kitchen because it wasn't Pinterest neutral. She replaced our bedroom set because Queen Energy doesn't sleep on oak. We had an argument, our first real one, when she spent wild $800 on a backyard photo shoot for our anniversary. Not a party, not a trip, just her, in 5 outfits, with a professional drone operator. I told her it made me uncomfortable, especially when she posted, "Built this life together. As our power couple, grind and shine." We didn't build this life together. She hadn't worked in over a year. Her reply, "You're obsessed with control. Maybe that's your trauma talking." That word trauma, she said it like an insult, like something broken in me that justified her detachment. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at our wedding photo across the room, the two of us smiling under a flower arch. And I noticed something I'd never let myself see before. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. The next day, I opened my closet to grab a tie for a client meeting and saw the wedding dress. Still in its custom zip cover. Still pristine. Still $3,200. And suddenly, it didn't look beautiful anymore. It looked like a receipt, a trophy, a monument to a promise only I planned to keep. That dress would haunt me for months each time I passed the closet. A silent reminder this woman didn't love me the way I loved her. Not deeply, not enduringly. Now here's where things got worse. Jake, my co-founder and best friend, pulled me aside after a quarterly meeting. He looked uncomfortable, which wasn't like him. Jake's the type to crack jokes even during audits. "Hey, man, weird question. Did you approve that $5,000 vendor payout for a wellness retreat?" I blinked. What retreat? Turned out, Jessica had submitted a business invoice from her personal development consultant, routing it through our office expenses via our junior admin, who she'd befriended at a happy hour. I confronted her that night. "You're using my company to fund wellness weekends." She didn't deny it. She just sipped wine and said, "Technically, you own the company, so it's all coming back to us, right?" I wish I could say I yelled or walked out, but I didn't. I just stood there, stunned by how casual she was about crossing that line. I thought she doesn't see the line because she's never had to earn anything. She thinks love means access, not respect. That same week, she started bringing up couples who were more evolved. One night, she showed me a podcast, two entrepreneurs talking about their open, trust-based marriage. She played it loud while making smoothies. I pretended not to hear. She turned it up. "They've been together 11 years, she said, and they've never been more fulfilled." "I'm fulfilled," I said. She looked at me like I was speaking ancient Greek. "That's because your ego is still chasing significance. I'm chasing connection." I don't know what I hated more, her words, or the smug way she said ego. Like ambition was a dirty word. Like the 6 years I spent building this life made me shallow. Jessica started disappearing on weekends. Always with a vague, "I'm reconnecting with my energy," or "Danny and I are going off-grid, phones off." You know? But her phone was never really off. She just didn't answer my texts. Meanwhile, I was drowning in meetings, handling staff drama, chasing million-dollar closings. There were days I came home too tired to eat, and she'd be curled on the couch, glass of red wine in one hand, texting furiously. I asked once, "Who are you talking to at 11:30 p.m.? She laughed. "Don't start with the insecure husband routine. That's not sexy." Around this time, Jake sat me down again, this time in a booth at our usual taco spot, a Tuesday night ritual we'd kept since the strip mall days. He looked me dead in the eye and said, "Ryan, you gotta wake up. She's bleeding you dry." I bristled. "She's just figuring stuff out." He shook his head. "She's not figuring out anything. She's feasting, and you're the buffet." That night, I drove home in silence. The city lights blurred against my windshield. I felt numb. I pulled into the driveway and stared at our front porch. I wasn't scared of losing her. I was scared I'd already lost myself. And then, 2 weeks later, she said the words that changed everything. standing in our kitchen, freshly tanned from a 4-day meditation conference in Sedona. Hair tousled, acai bowl in hand. We should talk about maybe opening our marriage. I've been doing a lot of inner work, and I realized I can love you and want freedom. I laughed. Reflex, shock, pain, all of it, bundled into a single breath. She looked confused. Why is that funny? I looked at her. Really looked. This woman, in a linen robe and $200 slippers, had no idea what she was asking. So let me get this straight. I said, you want my money, my loyalty, my silence, and now you want my permission to sleep with other people? She blinked. Wow, that's such a primitive way to put it. I stared at her. My mouth was dry. My chest was ice. But my mind crystal clear. I didn't answer her right away. She stood in our kitchen, sipping her smoothie like she hadn't just detonated a bomb in the middle of our marriage. I walked past her, opened the fridge, took out a bottle of water, and unscrewed the cap as calmly as I could. Because if I didn't keep my hands busy, I might have shattered something. So, I said, you want to explore other people while I keep the lights on and the checks flowing? Jessica rolled her eyes, like I was the immature one. Why are you being so binary about this? It's about expansion, not betrayal. That word, betrayal. I almost laughed. I took a slow sip of water, trying to taste something besides acid in the back of my throat. Do you love me? I asked quietly. Of course I do, she said. That's why I'm being honest. Honest? After months of passive-aggressive guilt-tripping, vanishing weekends, and backdoor invoices, this was honesty. I stared at her for a long moment, then set my water down. If you leave, I said, you're not coming back. She blinked. What do you mean? I mean, if you walk out of this house to expand with someone else, the locks will be changed before sunset. Her smile froze. She wasn't expecting a line in the sand. That's controlling. No, that's clarity. Jessica didn't pack that night. She stormed off to the guest bedroom, slammed the door, and didn't speak to me for 2 days. But something had shifted in me. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even heartbroken anymore. I was done. And once a man hits done, it's not loud. It's quiet. Like the silence that falls right before a courtroom verdict. I called David, my lawyer. The next morning. He'd been with me since year 1, back when I could only afford him for contract templates and late-night legal advice I paid in craft beer. I should have listened to you about the prenup, I said. David didn't say I told you so. He just sighed. Tell me everything. By noon, we had a strategy. Step 1, secure all business assets. Step 2, audit anything with her name on it. Step 3, prepare for the storm. He told me to start gathering records, texts, emails, financial statements. It wasn't about revenge. It was about protection. Because women like Jessica, they don't leave quietly. They rewrite the story on their way out. That weekend, she left for space. No details, just a vague promise she'd be in touch after she recentered. I waited until her Uber turned the corner, then changed the locks. Had the alarm system reprogrammed, removed her access to our bank accounts. Not out of spite, out of necessity. She'd already drained over $11,000 from our joint savings in the past 45 days alone. On what? A spiritual business coach, luxury retreats, and 3 separate donations to sketchy nonprofits linked to her favorite influencers. This wasn't a woman in transition. This was a woman in fantasy. A curated Instagram lifestyle, funded by my real-life exhaustion. Over the next 2 weeks, I put my plan in motion. David helped me draft an updated will. Instead of leaving anything to Jessica, I restructured my estate to fund a nonprofit scholarship for kids from low-income households, kids like me. 60% of my assets, locked, protected, irrevocable. The rest split between Jake and my sister in Denver. It wasn't a petty move. It was a statement. This empire wasn't built for someone who refused to build with me. Jake, meanwhile, was my anchor. He checked in every day, ran point at the office, and kept me from spiraling. One night, over whiskey and silence, he asked me, "You good, man?" I stared out at the skyline from his balcony. The city lit up like a constellation of second chances. "I will be." He nodded. No false comfort. No platitudes. Just two men who'd clawed their way out of nowhere and were now watching one of them reclaim his name. Jessica returned 2 weeks later. I heard her before I saw her, the sound of her key failing to turn in the new lock. Then a knock. 3 times. Then again. "Ryan." I opened the door just a crack. She looked confused, not angry, not apologetic. Just surprised that the world didn't pause while she meditated. "What happened to the lock?" "Changed it." "Why?" "You don't live here anymore." She blinked. "I never said I was leaving permanently. You said you wanted an open marriage. I was just exploring possibilities." And I closed the door on mine. She started to speak, then stopped. That was the first time I saw fear in her eyes. Not because I was shouting. I wasn't. I was calm. And calm is terrifying to someone used to manipulation. Where am I supposed to go? Wherever the path to enlightenment leads next. She tried crying. She tried bargaining. "You're throwing away everything we built." I couldn't help it. I actually laughed. We didn't build anything. I did. And I wasn't bitter. I was free. That night, I sat alone in our now quiet living room. The air felt cleaner. The silence, heavier but honest. I walked to the hall closet and opened the door. There it was. The wedding dress? Still in its pristine garment bag. Still $3,200. Still unworn in every way that mattered. I pulled it out, laid it across the dining table, and stared at it. Not with sadness, with clarity. 6 hours. That's how long she wore it. And that's exactly how long the marriage felt real. I boxed it up. Scheduled a courier. Included a note. 6 hours. $3,200. Keep the memories. But I wasn't done yet. The next morning, I drafted one final email. Subject line closure. Inside was a list of agreed terms, asset clarifications, and a single sentence. "You're free now. Just don't mistake that for being welcome." And then came the callback. Jessica wasn't done. She was just warming up. After Jessica's desperate knocks faded into silence, something inside me shifted. Not anger, not relief, something far colder. I realized I was no longer just fighting for my business or my finances. I was fighting for myself, for the life I'd built, for the dignity I'd earned the hard way. And I knew that the old Ryan, the one who swallowed the blame, who begged for harmony, was gone. The morning after locking her out, I sat at my kitchen table with a fresh black coffee and an open laptop. I wasn't just going to sit back and wait for Jessica's next move. I had to act. I drafted a list, a to-do list for dismantling the illusion she'd spun so well. Step 1, audit every dollar. I had a suspicion she'd been siphoning funds for months. Step 2, update legal documents. My will, my business contracts, the company's operating agreements. I called David, my lawyer, and laid everything out. Jessica's been drawing on company resources for personal use. She wants freedom. I want to make sure she doesn't get away with stealing my future. David was calm but firm. "It's going to be a battle, Ryan, but you have the facts on your side. We'll start by securing your assets and revising the estate plan. Protect yourself before she tries to rewrite the story." I spent days sifting through bank statements and invoices. Her name was on nearly every odd charge: spas, retreats, expensive dinners disguised as client entertainment. One charge stood out, a $12,000 payment to a so-called spiritual wellness consultant. I called Jake in. He was skeptical but ready. "Time to show her we're not just some paycheck," he said. We mapped out a plan: protect the company, protect my future, and don't give her a chance to control the narrative. Meanwhile, Jessica's silence was deafening. She stopped answering texts, blocked me on social media. But then, out of nowhere, a message slipped through from an unknown number. "Ryan, we need to talk. This isn't over." Her move surprised me, but I didn't flinch. At the office, Jake and I met late into the night. The city skyline glittered beyond the glass walls, a stark contrast to the tension inside. Jake's voice cut through the silence. "You're doing the right thing. This isn't just about business. It's about respect." That hit home, because this wasn't only about money or contracts. It was about the American dream. The idea that with hard work and grit, anyone can build something real. Jessica wanted to turn that dream into a transaction, and I was done letting her. One afternoon, I sat with David, signing paperwork to officially update the will. Instead of Jessica inheriting anything, I allocated 60% of my assets to a scholarship fund for underprivileged kids in Austin. Kids who, like me, knew what it meant to start from nothing. The rest split between Jake and my sister, people who'd stood by me when it mattered. David looked up, serious. "This sends a message." It wasn't revenge. It was justice. Back home, the silence was thick. I passed by the closet and stopped. There it was, the wedding dress. That $200 silk gown, still wrapped, untouched. I walked over, carefully unzipped it, and let it fall to the floor like shedding a second skin. It wasn't just fabric. It was a symbol of love unreciprocated, of a future I refused to mourn. Weeks later, Jessica returned. Her knock was soft this time. I opened the door just enough to see her standing there, unraveled, vulnerable. "Ryan, I made mistakes. Can we fix this?" I looked past her tears. "You wanted options. I gave you freedom." She searched my eyes for softness. There was none. "I'm done opening doors for someone who never plans to walk through them." She stepped back, swallowed her pride, and walked away. That moment wasn't just an ending. It was a beginning. But Jessica wasn't ready to quit. She tried everything: emails, calls, even showing up at the office. Each time, met with firm boundaries. One morning, a package arrived. Inside was the wedding dress, with a note. 6 hours, $3,200. A lesson well worth the price. I smiled. Because sometimes, the hardest battles are won not with fists or fury, but with clear, unwavering lines, and the courage to stand behind them. What happened next? Well, Jessica's next move shook everything. Jessica didn't back down, not even close. What came next was a calculated campaign, a full-court press to reclaim control not just of me, but of the entire narrative. It started with emails, dozens of them, demanding meetings, calling me cold and unreasonable, threatening legal action. I ignored them. Then came the phone calls buzzing like a persistent swarm. Her voice, sweet and urgent. "Ryan, we need to talk. For the kids. For us." There were no kids. She knew that. I let them go to voicemail. One afternoon, I arrived at the office and found a package on the doorstep, wrapped in glossy black paper, tied with a red ribbon. Inside, the wedding dress, the same $3,200 silk gown that had haunted me for months. Alongside it, a note in Jessica's flowing handwriting. 6 hours, $3,200, the price of a lesson. Maybe now you'll listen. I didn't smile. I felt a chill. That dress became my silent weapon. Every time I passed the glass conference room where we held meetings, I glanced at it. The pristine fabric, the perfect stitching, a symbol of what we pretended to have, and what she never truly wanted. Jessica's next move was bolder. She showed up at the office, not just for a meeting, but to confront me in front of my team. Her stilettos clicked across the polished floor like a warning shot. The office fell silent. She wore that dress, not the wedding gown, but a sleek black sheath that hugged every curve and attempt to reclaim power through presence. "Ryan," she said, voice low but sharp, "we need to find common ground. This can't be the end." Jake caught my eye. A nod, a silent reminder. I stepped forward. Calm, controlled. "Jessica, this isn't about common ground. This is about boundaries. You've had every chance, but respect isn't negotiable." She tried to smile, but the edges twitched. "You're making a mistake." I held up the wedding ring. The real mistake was thinking this ring meant forever. The tension broke when my assistant discreetly approached and handed me a file. Jessica's financial discrepancies. Over $20,000 unaccounted for in company funds. Payroll invoices, luxury spa charges, weekend getaways, all tagged under business expenses. "This is why I'm here," I said, voice steady, not for a reconciliation, but to make sure the truth comes out. That day, Jessica left the office defeated. But the war wasn't over. She launched a smear campaign. Subtle whispers in our industry. Questions about my character. Rumors that Ryan Carter's empire was built on lies and betrayal. But here's the twist. Jake and I turned that against her. We documented every interaction, every invoice, every threat, and prepared to fight back legally, publicly. One night, after a particularly grueling board meeting, I sat on my office balcony overlooking downtown Austin. The city lights stretched like a constellation of victories and scars. I thought about the kids who would benefit from my new scholarship fund. Children who knew struggle, who understood grit. And I smiled. Because this fight, it was never just about me. But the real battle was just beginning. Jessica's next move would shake the foundation of everything I'd built. Jessica's campaign was relentless. Whispers in the industry, veiled accusations, even a few pointed posts on social media painting me as cold, ruthless, a man obsessed with money over love. But beneath the surface, something unexpected happened. The truth started shining through. One brisk autumn morning, I arrived at the office early. The sky was the deep blue of a Texas dawn, crisp and promising. Jake was already there, waiting with a stack of documents. "Ryan, you've got a call," he said. It was David, my lawyer. "We have the upper hand now. The evidence is solid. Jessica's attempts to manipulate won't hold up." That same day, I met with the board. The room was thick with tension, but when I laid out the facts, the finances, the timelines, the inconsistencies, it was clear. I wasn't the villain. I was the victim fighting to protect what I'd built. The company rallied behind me. The agents. The staff, they saw the truth. Jake gave a powerful speech about integrity and loyalty, reminding everyone why we were successful, not because of drama, but because of grit and respect. At home, the silence was both a blessing and a weight. I found myself staring out the window, watching the city bustle below. The cold air seeped in, brushing against my skin like a reminder of what I'd lost and what I'd gained. One evening, Jake invited me to a small celebration 5 years since our company's founding. I stood on the balcony of our new office, the skyline glittering beneath the stars. I held a glass of bourbon, the amber liquid warm in my hands. "We did it, man," Jake said, clapping me on the back. But my mind was elsewhere. I thought of Jessica, the woman who once claimed to love me but had tried to take everything away. And I realized this fight wasn't about her anymore. It was about me reclaiming my life. Then came the day Jessica tried to negotiate. Her lawyer reached out with an offer to settle an attempt to rewrite the story yet again. I met with David. We can consider a reasonable agreement, he said, but not at the expense of everything you've worked for. I nodded. Justice, not charity. The final blow came quietly. Jessica's attempts to regain ground crumbled under scrutiny. Her story didn't hold, and she was forced to accept the terms no claim to the company, no share of the estate. As the dust settled, I walked through our empty house. Sunlight poured through the windows, illuminating the spaces that once held shared dreams. I stopped by the closet. The wedding dress was gone. I stepped onto the balcony again. The city stretched out like a canvas of second chances. I breathed in the cool air and felt something I hadn't in a long time, peace. But as I turned to go inside, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. You think this is over? My heart skipped. Because sometimes, the hardest battles are only the beginning. The air was thick with the scent of freshly brewed coffee and late autumn rain tapping against the window pane. I sat alone in my office, the glow from the city lights casting long shadows across the walls. It was quiet, almost too quiet. A stark contrast to the chaos of the last months. I reached out and ran my fingers over the edge of the empty desk, the place where countless late-night deals were made, where dreams had been built from nothing. But tonight, my thoughts weren't on the business. They were somewhere deeper, somewhere quieter. I thought about Jessica, not with anger, not with bitterness, but with a heavy sense of loss, not just of her, but of what I had once believed in, that love meant sacrifice. That marriage was a shared fortress. But sometimes, love is just a door closing. Walking past the closet, I paused. The place where that $3,200 wedding dress once hung, untouched, a symbol of a love that only lasted 6 hours. Now, that space was empty, the silence speaking louder than any words. I remembered the night I boxed it up, the feel of the silk slipping through my fingers, the weight of that finality settling in my chest. In that moment, I realized something profound. Freedom wasn't about opening doors for someone else to walk through. It was about closing the ones that kept you trapped. Weeks passed, and with them came a steady rebuilding, not just of my business or my finances, but of myself. I founded a scholarship fund for kids who, like me, started with nothing. Kids whose dreams were big, but whose opportunities were small. I wanted to give them a chance I never had. One chilly morning, I met a young woman in the office lobby. She was holding a thick portfolio, eyes bright but shadowed by uncertainty. "Thank you for this opportunity," she said softly. Her name was Maya, and she reminded me of myself at 22, eager, determined, and hungry for a future. In that moment, I saw more than just a scholarship recipient. I saw the legacy of every choice I'd made, the fights, the losses, the victories. But life, as I learned, rarely comes with neat endings. One afternoon, as I prepared to close the office, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. The message read, "You think you've won, but some ghosts don't rest." The chill ran down my spine. Because sometimes, the past refuses to stay buried. And sometimes, the hardest battles are the ones we fight within ourselves. I sat back, staring at the city skyline. The same lights that once lit my path now flickered with new questions. Was I truly free? Had I really won? Or was this just the beginning of another fight? So here's what I want you to take away from this story. Sometimes the people we trust the most can break us. Sometimes, the dreams we build with our own hands can be threatened by those we love. But true strength, it's not in holding on to what's lost. It's in having the courage to rebuild, redefine, and rise again. If this story hit home, if you've ever been betrayed by someone you gave everything to, don't stay silent. Drop a comment, no more silence. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, respect isn't negotiable. Your dignity is worth more than any contract or promise. Thank you for watching. Stay strong, stay true, and until next time, keep building your legacy story. My name is Ethan Walker. I'm 31 years old, and I built my life brick by brick, literally. I manage construction projects across Austin, Texas. I own my house, drive a brand new F-150, pay my bills early, and I don't owe a damn cent to anyone. I thought I had everything lined up. The job, the house, the girl. Haley Morgan. She was everything I thought I didn't deserve, and everything I worked to prove I did. Real estate queen, effortless charm, knew how to talk to millionaires and make them thank her for spending money. Our worlds collided at an open house I was remodeling. She walked in wearing heels that cost more than my truck's tires and asked me if I was the contractor or the owner. I smiled and said, "Both." She laughed. I fell. 3 years later, I stood at the altar, sweating in a tailored suit, holding on to a future I thought was certain. 1 second, I was watching her walk toward me in a white silk gown. The next, I was standing there, alone, gripping a bouquet that had just slammed into my chest after she dropped it. She said, "I'm sorry, Ethan, I can't do this," and ran. Right into the arms of Brandon Chase, her ex from college, who waltzed into the church like he was the damn finale of a bad reality show. He looked straight at her, not caring about the 200 people in that room, and said loud and clear, "The night we had 3 days ago was amazing. Come with me." Let me repeat that for anyone who missed it. 3 days ago. Yeah, that same night she told me she needed space for spiritual clarity. She needed to align her soul before stepping into a lifelong commitment. She needed a solo retreat in Sedona. And like a fool, I believed her. I didn't chase. I didn't yell. I didn't make a scene. I sent out wedding cancellation emails that afternoon and turned off my phone. And for 2 months, I disappeared from everyone. But now I'm ready to talk. Because Haley didn't just break my heart. She cracked open something deeper, something I didn't know existed inside me. Before I tell you how I turned heartbreak into something Haley never saw coming, hit that like button if you've ever been blindsided by someone who swore they'd love you forever. Leave a comment if your "I do" turned into "What the hell just happened?" and subscribe. Because this isn't just a story of betrayal, it's one of clarity, justice, and maybe revenge. Let's start from the beginning. 3 months before the wedding. Haley quit her job. Said she wanted to focus on being present for the big day, planning florals, coordinating caterers, practicing inner alignment. I offered to hire a planner. She refused. "This is sacred. Ethan, I want to feel it fully." Sacred. God. That word stings now. At first, it felt romantic. She was making vision boards, sage smudging our hallway, holding full moon intention ceremonies. Brandon does this too. She once mentioned in passing. "Lighting Palo Santo in our kitchen," I asked. Brandon, who she blinked. Brandon Chase. Remember my old classmate from UC Berkeley? He's a spiritual counselor now. I nodded. I didn't like it, but I trusted her. She had a lot of guy friends from her old circle's liberal arts. Burning Man types. I was a straight-shooter Texas guy who drank Shiner Bock and built foundations for a living. I figured maybe I needed a little spiritual growth. But my sister, Jessica, wasn't buying it. "She's acting off, Ethan," she said one afternoon while we ate tacos out of foil in my truck. "Always on her phone. Leaves the room to take calls. That weird dreamcatcher guy commenting on all her Instagram posts. She's just stressed." I shrugged. Stressed people don't go AWOL for 48 hours without texting their fiancé. Jess snapped. But I brushed her off. again. I had tunnel vision of a backyard wedding, a Bali honeymoon, 2 kids with her eyes, and my patience. Vision of waking up next to the same woman every morning for the rest of my life. I thought that was what Haley wanted too. Then came that fateful Thursday. 3 days before the wedding. She went out with her girlfriends for a spiritual bachelorette cleanse, whatever that meant. Didn't come home until 3:12 a.m. No calls, no texts. Her phone went straight to voicemail. When she walked in, smelling like incense and tequila, I asked where she'd been. She got defensive, called me controlling, said I was afraid of her freedom, said maybe we should postpone the wedding. And like a damn idiot, I apologized. I told her she could have all the space she needed, that I trusted her. She kissed me on the forehead and said, "That's why I love you. Ethan, you don't cage me." And then, she left the next morning for her solo retreat in Sedona. I didn't hear from her again until the wedding day. That morning, I woke up to a voicemail from my mom freaking out about the boutonnieres not matching the bridesmaids' dresses. I told her not to worry. Everything's going to be fine. What a joke. At 1 p.m., Marcus, my best man, showed up with the other groomsmen. We took photos, shared a beer, joked about marriage. I remember thinking, this is it. I made it. I found someone who gets me. By 3 p.m., I was standing at the altar. The string quartet started playing. The guests stood. The chapel doors opened. And Haley? God, she looked stunning, like a Vogue cover dipped in moonlight. Her dad walked her down the aisle, shook my hand, kissed her cheek, sat down. We held hands as the pastor talked about commitment, love, and eternity. I was locked in, no nerves, no doubt. "I do," I said when asked. Then the pastor turned to her. "Haley Morgan, do you take Ethan Walker?" And that's when it happened. The doors opened behind us. Footsteps, loud, unapologetic. Gasps from the crowd. Haley's hand stiffened in mine. I turned. Brandon Chase. Dark suit, man bun, crystal necklace, smirk. "Haley," he said, "I know you still love me." Silence. People turned, murmuring. Then he added louder, "The night we had 3 days ago was amazing. Come with me." Haley froze. Whispered. Brandon, like a ghost, had walked in. Then turned to me. Tears welled in her eyes. And she whispered the words that still echo in my skull, "Ethan, I'm sorry. I can't do this." She dropped my hands, dropped the bouquet, ran. He followed. The doors slammed shut behind them. And I just stood there, holding that damn bouquet like a groom-shaped paperweight. My mom sobbed. My dad looked ready to punch something. Jessica's jaw was clenched so tight, I thought her teeth would crack. Marcus whispered, "Bro, what the hell just happened?" But I couldn't answer, because in that moment, I wasn't even sure what was real anymore. The first thing I noticed was the silence. Not the peaceful kind, no. This was the kind that screams, the kind that hums inside your skull and makes the hair on your arms stand up. I wasn't breathing. I wasn't blinking. I was just standing, frozen at the altar with 200 pairs of eyes piercing through my tux. My fingers were still wrapped around the stems of Haley's bouquet. White roses, baby's breath, a sprig of eucalyptus she picked herself from that overpriced florist downtown. The stems were still damp. The petals had started to bruise where my grip had tightened. Someone coughed. The pastor cleared his throat. I heard my mother let out a choked sob. My dad muttered something under his breath. Jessica, my sister, stood up, jaw locked, fists clenched like she was ready to deck someone. She didn't say a word. She didn't have to. Then Marcus, my best man, walked up behind me and whispered, "Let's get you out of here, man." I nodded. Or, at least, I think I did. He gently took the bouquet from my hands, like he was disarming a bomb, and guided me toward the side aisle. I kept my eyes straight ahead, refusing to meet the gazes of friends, cousins, co-workers, the photographer still holding his camera mid-air like he didn't know whether to keep shooting. As I stepped into the hallway, I heard murmurs swell behind me. A baby cried, someone dropped a champagne glass, and somewhere in the back row, some idiot whispered, maybe it was a prank. It wasn't. Marcus helped me into my truck. We sat there in silence, engine off, AC off, just heat from my chest rising and filling the cab like smoke. He turned to me, voice soft. "You want me to drive?" I shook my head. My knuckles were already white on the steering wheel. "I need to feel something," I mumbled. "Okay," he said. "I'll follow you." And he did. I pulled out of the venue like a ghost driving a machine. Every turn felt underwater. Red lights blurred into green. I don't remember the drive, just that I ended up home. I walked into my house, a house I bought with my own sweat and calloused hands, and everything was exactly where it had been this morning. Except it all looked different. There was still a "Welcome to our forever" sign leaning against the kitchen wall. The guest list was on the table with check marks in pink ink, Haley's ink. The honeymoon luggage we bought together sat by the door. Hers had a little white tag with wifey in gold cursive. I stared at it, and then I laughed. Not the good kind. The kind that sounds like it might turn into a scream if you're not careful. I didn't touch my phone. I couldn't. It kept buzzing, over and over. Texts. Calls. Voicemails. I shoved it face down into the couch cushions. Then I sat there, alone, in a house dressed up for a future that no longer existed. Hours passed. I don't remember how many. Just that the sun had shifted when the doorbell rang. It was Marcus. He didn't knock, just walked in. He held up his phone. His face was pale. "Dude, I need you to see this." He played the video. Someone had filmed it. Of course they had. From the back row, angled just right to catch the moment Brandon burst in. The expression on Haley's face. The bouquet hitting my chest. The way I just stood there, motionless. It was already online. Already viral. Twitter, Reddit, TikTok. The captions were brutal. "Runaway bride, live at the altar." He said, "I do." She said, "I did," with someone else. This is why men don't trust anymore. Thousands of views. Hundreds of comments. Some sympathetic, some mocking, all watching. "Do you want me to take it down?" Marcus asked. I shook my head. "No," I said, "let them see. Let them all see." Because something inside me had shifted. The pain was still there, raw, pulsing, but underneath it, something colder, sharper. I wasn't going to hide. Not anymore. The next day, I drove to my parents' house for Sunday dinner. Yes, Sunday dinner. The Walkers are traditional. My mom still makes pot roast. My dad still reads the paper. My sister still shows up in black jeans and glares at anyone who breathes wrong. The moment I walked in, my mom rushed over and hugged me so hard, I thought I'd suffocate in Chanel No. 5. "Oh, honey," she whispered. "You didn't deserve that. None of it." My dad less sentimental. He poured me a whiskey and said, "She made her choice. Now you make yours." Jessica, of course, was already plotting war. I swear to God, if I see her at Whole Foods, I'm getting banned for life. I chuckled. First time in 2 days. But then my mom said something that stopped me cold. "Sweetheart, her family is saying Brandon forced her. That she was scared. That it wasn't what it looked like." I blinked. "Excuse me. They're doing damage control." Jessica spat. Samantha Haley's sister posted on Facebook that Brandon manipulated her, that it was some kind of breakdown. My jaw clenched. "A breakdown that conveniently included sleeping with her ex 3 days before our wedding," I snapped. My mom flinched. My dad took a long sip of his drink. Jessica just said, "We know the truth. Let them spin their story. You keep yours." That night, I pulled the old wedding letter from my nightstand. The one I wrote to Haley, the one I was going to give her on our wedding night. It started with my forever. I lit a match, watched it burn, and as the ash curled upward, I made a decision. I wasn't just going to move on. I was going to move through the lies, through the whispers, through whatever Haley and Brandon thought they'd get away with. Because this wasn't just personal anymore. This was public. And if they wanted an audience, they'd get one. The days after the wedding disaster didn't just pass, they piled up like storms, one crushing wave after another. I had always thought heartbreak was private, something you locked away, whispered about only to your closest friends. But with Haley and Brandon's stunt, it was public blasted across social media, dissected on every platform, and debated by strangers who knew nothing about us. I could feel it before I even opened my phone. The weight, the buzzing, the flood. Notifications exploded like fireworks, some messages genuine, but many brutal. "You got played. She dodged a bullet. Bet she's glad to be rid of boring Ethan. American dream crushed. Again." Each ping tore through me. The shame didn't hurt as much as the disbelief. How quickly people were ready to judge. How fast sympathy evaporated in the face of gossip. And then came the phone calls, not just from friends and family, but Haley's people, her sisters, her old friends, even her real estate clients. Some were angry. Some pleaded with me to just let it go. Others wanted details, a spectacle, something juicy. But the biggest shock wasn't what Haley's camp said. It was what some of my own family whispered behind closed doors. Maybe she had a reason. Maybe Ethan was too predictable. She deserved someone who challenged her. Challenge her. I remember sitting alone on my back porch, hands trembling around a glass of bourbon, the Texas heat pressed down like a judgment. I wasn't just grieving a broken engagement. I was fighting the idea that my love, my stability, my sacrifices weren't enough. That was the injustice that tore at me the most.
Meanwhile, the viral video wasn't just online, it was everywhere.
At work, clients whispered. The office was colder. The construction site crew avoided me. I could feel eyes. Not pity, but suspicion. Is this guy really the dependable one? Or the sucker? Every time I walked past a screen showing that clip Haley's tear-streaked face, Brandon's smug grin, I felt my chest tighten. Like the bouquet hitting me at the altar was still there. A physical bruise no medicine could heal. I began to notice the little things. People's faces when they thought I wasn't looking. The forced smiles from friends. The subtle sideways glances. My dream of the perfect American life, the house, the truck, the wedding felt like a cruel joke. I was stuck in a nightmare I hadn't earned. One afternoon, my sister Jessica called. "Ethan, you need to listen," she said, voice sharp but worried. "What?" "There's more going on. Haley's family. They're spinning stories. It's not just about the wedding. They say Brandon didn't just walk back in to ruin you. They say you were controlling, jealous, that you pushed her away." I laughed bitter and dry. Jessica, she just dropped me in front of 200 people because she chose him. Do you think jealous covers that? She was quiet. Then, "I know, but it's going to get worse. If you want to fight back, you need to be smart." That was the first time I realized this wasn't just a broken engagement or a messy breakup. It was a battle for the story, for the truth. That night, I dug out everything: texts, emails, voicemails, even screenshots of Haley's suspicious messages. There was the night she told me she needed space, but disappeared for a week with no contact. There was the message Brandon sent her the night before our wedding: "Can't wait to see you again." There was the time I caught her on the phone whispering, "We have to be careful. Ethan's not suspicious, yet. Each piece was a jagged shard cutting deeper. I printed everything. Laid it all out on the kitchen table. It was ugly, real, and it was proof. The next morning, Marcus showed up, the weight of the last 2 months in his eyes. "You ready?" he asked. To do what I said. To fight. For you. For what you deserve. Marcus was more than my best man. He'd been my brother since college, a guy who never sugarcoated things. He handed me his old laptop. "I got a guy, lawyer friend. He's done this kind of thing before. Family drama, messy breakups, you name it." We started building a plan. First step, document everything. Create a timeline that no one could deny. Second step, warn people who'd try to gaslight me, my family, friends, work contacts. Third step, decide how and when to expose the truth. It felt like stepping into a war zone. But even as we planned, the pressure mounted. Haley's sister Samantha posted a heartfelt apology video on Instagram. Said Brandon had pressured Haley, that she was scared, that the wedding wasn't what she wanted. The comments exploded. Some believed her. Some called it a lie. The online battlefield was no place for nuance. Then came the hardest blow. A mutual friend sent me a clip. A private video of Haley and Brandon at a bar laughing, drinking, flirting the night before my 3 a.m. disappearance. I watched it over and over. Her smile, his hand on her back. The laughter echoing in a world that no longer included me. That was when I knew. This wasn't just a betrayal of love. It was a calculated betrayal. One late night, sitting alone with a glass of bourbon and the fading embers of the bouquet in my fireplace, I whispered to the ashes, "You made your choice. Now it's my turn." The fire cracked. The petals curled and blackened. And as the smoke drifted toward the ceiling, I felt something cold and clear in my chest. I wasn't broken. I was waking up. Just then, my phone buzzed. A text from Jessica. "Call me, urgent," I answered. She said, "Ethan, you're not going to believe who just showed up at my door." I froze. "Who?" "Haley's dad. He wants to talk." The line went dead. I dropped the phone, heart pounding. Haley's family reaching out. Why now? What did they want? That phone call from my sister wasn't just a surprise. It was the first crack in the wall I'd built around myself. Haley's dad wanted to talk. And suddenly, the story wasn't so black and white anymore. The next afternoon, I found myself sitting across from Richard Morgan Haley's father in a quiet cafe downtown. The smell of fresh coffee mingled with the faint hum of other conversations. But inside my head, everything was loud and chaotic. Richard wasn't what I expected. He looked tired. Lines around his eyes hinted at sleepless nights. His usual polished suit was wrinkled, the tie loose. He didn't waste time. "Ethan," he began, voice low, "I'm here because this has gone too far." I leaned back, arms crossed. "You mean the public humiliation?" He nodded. "Yes, and the lies." "What lies?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Haley's been caught in a spiral. Brandon, he's not who she thought he was." I raised an eyebrow. "Wait, you're saying Brandon manipulated her?" Richard looked me in the eye. "More than that. He's dangerous. We didn't know until recently. There's more behind the scenes." I swallowed hard. My mind raced. So much of this felt like a script from a bad TV show. But the truth was that I was living it. Richard reached into his briefcase and pulled out an envelope. "This came from Haley's lawyer. I think you should see it." I opened the envelope carefully. Inside was a sheaf of documents, emails, text messages, even a video link. The emails detailed conversations between Brandon and Haley's team, pressure tactics, threats, financial leverage. The text messages were desperate pleas from Haley to Richard, begging for help. And the video link? I hesitated. Clicked play. Haley, eyes red and swollen, explaining how Brandon forced her into situations she couldn't escape, how she felt trapped between fear and loyalty. I sat back, the room spinning slightly. This wasn't the woman who stood up at the altar. This was someone else entirely. Someone scared. Someone controlled. I closed the laptop and met Richard's gaze. So, what now? He sighed. We want to protect her, but she needs to face the truth. And so do you. I nodded slowly. For the first time since the wedding, the fight inside me ignited not anger or pain, but clarity. I was no longer a victim. I was a man ready to reclaim his story. That night, I met Marcus at my place. He'd been with me since day one, but tonight felt different. We spread out all the evidence we had, the printed texts, emails, and that damn viral video. It's time, I said, voice firm. Marcus nodded. We need to hit back smart, publicly, legally. You want justice, not a mess. I agreed. Our plan had to be precise. First, gather more proof. Second, build a timeline nobody could dispute. Third, find allies, lawyers, friends, anyone who could back us up. Most importantly, keep control. The next days were a whirlwind. I hired a lawyer who specialized in defamation and harassment. Marcus worked his network to get contacts in the media. I started compiling everything, every lie, every manipulation, every moment of betrayal. Late nights blurred into early mornings. My body ached. My mind raced. But something inside me thrived. For the first time, I was no longer just reacting. I was acting, but Haley wasn't silent either. Her sister Samantha's posts became more aggressive. Her family pushed their narrative harder. Social media turned into a battlefield. Friends chose sides. Work grew colder. The pressure was suffocating. Yet, through it all, I clung to one symbol that kept me grounded, the burned bouquet from that night. I kept it in a glass case on my desk. A reminder that beauty can be destroyed, but ashes can be reborn. One afternoon, my lawyer called. We have a meeting with Haley's legal team. They want to settle. I stared at the phone, heart pounding. Was this it? A chance to end the nightmare. Or another trap, I told Marcus. He shrugged. Only one way to find out. Then, the unexpected happened. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Ethan, meet me at the cafe on 5th. Alone. I have info you need. I stared. Was this a trap, a prank? Or the break I needed? That night, under the dim streetlights, I walked into the cafe. A woman sat in the corner booth. She looked familiar, but I couldn't place her. I'm Olivia, she said, voice low. I used to work for Brandon. My heart skipped. She slid a folder across the table. Everything you want to know about him and Haley's real story is in here. I opened it. Inside were financial records, photos, even recordings. This wasn't just about a broken engagement. It was a conspiracy. And it was far from over. As I left the cafe, clutching the folder, the wind hit my face. I looked up at the sky. This was no longer just personal. It was war. And I was ready. I woke up that morning feeling like a man on the edge of something big. My hands trembled slightly, but not from fear, from the weight of what was about to happen. Marcus was already at my door when I stepped outside, coffee in hand, eyes sharp with determination. We're doing this, he said. I nodded. Let's take them apart piece by piece. We had the plan, the proof, the allies. Now it was time to move. The first move was subtle, but powerful, a carefully worded letter sent to Haley's real estate clients, exposing the truth behind the viral scandal, while protecting myself from libel claims. I watched from the sidelines as whispers turned into conversations. Conversations turned into doubts, and doubts slowly began to crack the fortress Haley's family had built. The video that once painted me as the fool was now being questioned. Was Haley really the victim she claimed to be, or the architect of deception? Next came the social media campaign. I hired a friend skilled in digital strategy, someone who knew how to use the internet's power without getting lost in its chaos. Together, we released evidence texts, emails, video clips not to shame, but to tell my side. The response was immediate. Comments flooded in. Glad he's standing up for himself. Finally, someone's telling the truth. This is why you never trust the perfect couple. The online battlefield was raging, but this time, the momentum was mine. But the fight wasn't just digital. At work, colleagues who once avoided me started asking questions, showing support, even defending me when the subject came up. My boss called me into his office, handing me a promotion as a show of confidence. "I believe in your character, Ethan," he said. "Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." That promotion wasn't just about money, it was validation. The burned bouquet sat in its glass case, silent witness to my transformation. Every time I looked at it, I remembered the night it hit me, the weight of betrayal, and the strength I found afterward. It was no longer a symbol of loss, but of resilience. But just when I thought things were turning, the unexpected happened. Haley's lawyer sent a cease and desist letter threatening legal action if I published any more false and defamatory content. Marcus and I weren't surprised. That's when I realized this wasn't just about a wedding or a breakup. This was a battle for my reputation, my dignity, and I wasn't backing down. One evening, Marcus and I sat in my living room, laying out every piece of evidence we had. "This is bigger than you," Marcus said. "I know." "And bigger than her?" I looked at the screen emails, photos, and a new twist, a secret bank account linked to Brandon, showing unexplained transfers. Money laundering, blackmail. It didn't matter. The truth was a weapon, and I was ready to wield it. The media caught wind. A local reporter reached out, eager for an exclusive. Marcus warned me, "Be careful, this could blow up." But I wanted the world to know. I agreed to the interview. The day of the interview, I dressed carefully, no suit, just clean-cut confidence. As the camera rolled, I spoke not just for myself, but for anyone who's ever been betrayed, gaslit, or pushed to the edge. I told my story, the betrayal, the silence, the fight. I held up the burned bouquet on camera. "This," I said, voice steady, "is the weight of betrayal, but also the ashes of rebirth." After the interview aired, messages poured in. Supporters, survivors, strangers who connected with my pain. I realized then this story was no longer just mine. It belonged to anyone who ever felt broken and found the strength to rise. But the battle wasn't over. A week later, an anonymous package arrived at my door. Inside was a USB drive. Marcus plugged it in. Videos, photos, conversations. Evidence that flipped the narrative once again, showing Haley was planning this all along. Coaching Brandon, manipulating everyone. I sat back, heart pounding. This was the proof we needed. Just then, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Meet me, midnight. Pier 9, come alone." The screen went dark. The night air was cold, sharp against my skin as I made my way to Pier 9. The city lights reflected on the water, shimmering like a promise or a warning. My heart thumped with every step, adrenaline mixed with dread. Whoever had sent that message wasn't messing around. The pier was mostly deserted, except for one figure waiting near the old fishing boats, shadows hiding their face. "Ethan," the voice said softly, It was Olivia, the woman who'd handed me the folder full of secrets weeks ago. She pulled me aside, urgency burning in her eyes. "There's more you need to know. Stuff that'll blow this whole thing wide open." My throat tightened. I nodded. Her next words hit me like a punch. "Haley's family. They're scared. The truth about Brandon is worse than you think. And they're trying to silence anyone who gets close." I swallowed the lump rising in my chest. "Are you saying I'm in danger?" Olivia didn't hesitate. "Yes." That moment shifted everything. I wasn't just fighting a broken relationship anymore. I was battling a calculated, ruthless force. The days that followed were a blur of meetings, phone calls, and sleepless nights. My lawyer prepped me for the media storm, while Marcus scouted for any sign of trouble. Every text made my fingers tremble. Every unexpected knock made me flinch. But I stayed steady, because I knew what I was fighting for. Haley's camp didn't stay silent. They launched counterattacks, flooding social media with carefully crafted messages. Samantha posted tearful videos about family betrayal, Brandon's misunderstood past, and Ethan's aggressive pursuit. But their narrative was cracking. More and more people saw through the facade. Friends I hadn't spoken to in years reached out. Strangers sent messages of support. The burned bouquet on my desk was no longer just a symbol of pain, it was a beacon of resilience. Then came the courtroom summons. Haley and Brandon were suing for defamation. The legal battle was on. The tension in the air was thick as I sat in the sterile courtroom, the judge's gavel echoing like a heartbeat. Every piece of evidence we had laid bare: emails, videos, bank records. Brandon's smirk faded as the truth unfolded. The judge's eyes narrowed. This court does not take kindly to manipulation and deceit. Outside the courtroom, the media frenzy was relentless. But instead of fear, I felt a strange calm. I was no longer the victim. I was the man who stood tall against betrayal. Months later, the verdict came down. Haley's family faced penalties. Brandon was discredited. My name was cleared. The courtroom drama was over, but the scars remained. Walking out of the courthouse, I felt the weight lift. The ashes of that burned bouquet whispered of endings and beginnings. I was free. But freedom had a price. Not everyone was happy. That night, a message lit up my phone. "Watch your back." No name. No explanation. Just a chilling reminder the fight might be over. But the war wasn't. The dust had finally settled. The courtroom drama was behind me. The headlines faded. The viral videos replaced by new stories. But the scars, both visible and invisible, stayed with me, like shadows tracing my every step. I sat at my kitchen table, the burned bouquet resting quietly in its glass case. It had been more than just flowers that night. It was the weight of betrayal, the ache of shattered dreams, but also the spark that ignited my fight. I reached out and touched the glass gently, tracing the charred petals with my finger. In those ashes, I saw my own story, one of destruction, yes, but also of resilience, of rising from the flames. People often ask me, "Ethan, what did you learn from all this? From the heartbreak, the betrayal, the public humiliation?" It's a question I wrestled with in the quiet hours. Here's what I realized. Sometimes the people we trust the most can hurt us the deepest. That's an ugly truth, but it's also a chance to redefine ourselves. I learned that love, in its purest form, isn't just about promises or rings or social media posts. It's about honesty, respect, and the courage to walk away when those are broken. But beyond personal pain, there's a larger lesson about the world we live in. The American dream, that promise of success, love, and happiness isn't always so straightforward. There are layers of expectation, of performance, of image. I was supposed to be the stable guy, the responsible one, the man who had it all figured out. But in the end, that wasn't enough. Haley sought something else, something unpredictable, wild, and unbound by tradition. That clash between stability and freedom, order and chaos, is a tension many of us face today. And it's messy. Despite it all, I chose to reclaim my narrative. I stopped hiding behind shame or silence. I spoke up. I fought back, not out of spite, but out of a demand for truth and respect. And in doing so, I found strength I never knew I had. My relationship with my family changed too. They saw me not as the failed fiancé, but as a man who stood tall in adversity. Jessica became my fiercest ally, rallying friends and family alike. My parents, once worried about reputation, realized that integrity mattered more than appearances. And Marcus, my best man, my brother, stood by me through every storm. Without him, I might have crumbled. He reminded me that family isn't just about blood, but about loyalty and love. As I look ahead, the future feels uncertain, but hopeful. I'm rebuilding my life brick by brick, like the projects I manage, learning to trust again, cautiously but genuinely. Sometimes I still feel that ache, a reminder of what was lost. But I also feel the fire that keeps me moving forward. The bouquet may have burned, but from its ashes, I'm growing stronger. If there's one thing I want you to take away from my story, it's this. No matter how dark the night, no matter how deep the wound, you have the power to rise, to choose truth over lies, to stand tall when the world expects you to fall, and most importantly, to never let betrayal define you. Thank you for listening. If this story touched you, if you've ever faced betrayal, heartbreak, or public shame, know you're not alone. Like, comment, and share your story. Let's build a community where truth and resilience shine. Subscribe for more stories that remind us we're stronger than our pain. Before I go, one last thought. Life's twists are unpredictable. The people we trust might break us, but they also teach us who we really are. And sometimes, the most powerful revenge isn't in tearing someone down. It's in rising above and becoming better than you ever imagined. As the sun sets over Austin, I hold the burned bouquet close, not as a symbol of loss, but as a testament to survival. This is my story, and it's just the beginning.